The J. Michaels Show.
Today, my guest is Bonnie Divina Maa. She is the author of The Place Beyond the Story. And we're going to be meeting her and talking to her about her journey. Bonnie, it is so nice to see you.
It's great to be here, Jay. Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. The book, when you when you literally put pen to paper, what were you thinking that you wanted this book to be?
The story of my story.
Well, tell me about your story.
Well, this is a part of the story, and it's an important part because it really was a pinnacle moment for me. This part of the story began in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been going through, prior to that, for about 3 years, some pretty difficult, challenging times of my life. A lot of marriage difficulties, a lot of depression, suicidal thoughts, a couple of suicidal attempts. And it culminated in a breakthrough.
What was that breakthrough?
Well, the breakthrough was the spiritual awakening that happened as a result of the breakdown, right? And
okay.
I think that we often call these things a breakdown, but ultimately, if we can turn toward it, then we see that it is actually a breakthrough. There's something breaking through.
Right. Everything's a lesson.
Yeah. Sometimes we might call it like a dark night of the soul, where we're feeling very, very lost, where we've lost our sense of self. We don't know who we are anymore. We don't know why we're here. We don't know our purpose. We're just kind of floundering around in the abyss, not feeling like we have any ground to stand on.
Right.
Certainly had lost all of my connection to God, source, creator, universe, to that same aspect that is within myself, which in the book I refer to as the capital S self, or the soul self, or the high self.
Yeah.
And so I actually ended up in a mental hospital for a little while.
Did you check yourself in, or were you checked in?
I had a friend take me to check myself in, to turn myself in. Yeah.
You were that low. You were at that point where you were just broken, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk now about that moment. What did you do at that point?
At that point, I think there's a level of acceptance that this is something that I can no longer do on my own. And I've got to find a place, any place that's going to give me some reprieve, a place to break down, a place to just kind of let it all go.
Right.
And really also to kind of hide away. There was that aspect of it as well. Like I did kind of need to go to a place where I could just bury myself in my dark room for a little while and allow for that to fully just be processed, be felt, and acknowledged. And very quickly there, I realized, this is not going to be the thing.
Right.
It was a good place to have that moment where I was able to just back away from everything that was so deeply triggering, that was creating so much struggle for me. And I was diagnosed there with major depression. And of course, in a place like that, one of their main goals is to find the medications that are going to help you.
Right. Drugs.
And
put you on drugs. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the primary focus.
Yeah.
For sure. Uh, there are some other little therapies they throw in there, but primarily it was the medications. And boy, did I fight that. Once I was in there, I quickly discovered, like, oh, this isn't a healing place.
Right. Right.
This is not going to be it. The only thing I could eat in there, barely eat, was the grilled cheese.
Oh,
I think I had
goodness.
like 3 grilled cheeses a day
Good.
until I had a friend start bringing me some food. And I argued quite a bit with the psychiatrists and the people there, like, this isn't helpful.
Yeah.
None of these things are going to help me. And just by so much grace, there was one nurse in there. And I, by the way, was a nurse at the time myself. I was a nurse prior to what I do now. And I worked in the emergency room at the time.
Uh-huh.
And she sat me down and she said, "You want to get out of here?" I said, yeah, I'm ready to get out now.
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, there's only one way out. You got to play the game.
Oh.
Take the medications,
Uh-huh.
stop telling people they're not working, get yourself out of your room, go to some of the group meetings,
Yeah.
say the things they want to hear. That's the only way you're getting out."
Wow.
And so I did that, and got out.
Uh-huh. So at what point did you decide that you wanted to write a book about your journey and tell everyone about this?
So this happened quite a ways in. After I left the hospital, things happened very quickly. I realized that divorce was a necessary thing at that point. We came to that conclusion. And there was a lot of things that came in. One, which I talk about in the group and in the book, is a vision that I had of a very famous guru called Nimkroli Baba. He's also the guru of Ram Dass, who many people know. I also sat with ayahuasca. I found bhakti yoga, which is chanting.
Yes.
Sanskrit chant. It's one of the aspects of it, devotional yoga,
Mm-hmm.
and an ashram.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of these things happened very, very quickly. And then I met somebody who was going to have a soul journey, was going to go to all of these spiritual lands. And we fell in love. And so I went, and there's a whole lot that happens. And probably about 9 or 10 months into that 13-month journey, I was in Vipassana.
What's that?
And Vipassana is a special type of meditation that they say that's how the Buddha taught us to meditate. And there are Vipassana centers all over the world. And the classic Vipassana, this style, would be to spend 10 days in silence. There are other people there, but there's no eye contact. You're basically in your own bubble, meditating for most of the time from about 4:30 in the morning till about 8 o'clock at night, with some other breaks and some other little things thrown in there.
Now, your belief system before all of this, was it Buddhist?
No. Well, I grew up Christian, and then I got away from that completely. And by that point, I would, prior to going on this journey, having this breakdown, I had no foundation. There was nothing. There was no spirituality. There was no sense of God or anything greater than myself. I was very wrapped up in myself at that point, although I was really open to a lot of other things.
Would you have considered yourself agnostic or atheist?
No, No, I definitely believed in something greater,
Mm-hmm.
but had certainly lost the connection, wasn't doing any kind of practices
Mm-hmm.
to anchor that back in. Uh, Vipassana was a really profound experience for me because it is where I finally found again that part of myself that we might call the eternal self. The
Mm-hmm.
part of us
Soul.
that doesn't die when we leave the body, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I had a very strong, profound experience of that. And it was right during that same Vipassana time, which I got the message, write your book. I was like, write my book? What book?
Yeah. Well, tell me about that experience. Tell me about what you went through that then led to that.
In the Vipassana itself.
Yes.
So Vipassana is a meditation where we kind of like scan, we keep going through the body, scanning until we feel a sensation in each part of the body. So as soon as we feel some sort of sensation, say in the face, then we move on to the throat and the arms and the hands, and we just keep going back and forth. And what that eventually does, it's for one, it's clearing our mind.
Mm-hmm.
So because we're not having any intake, we're not talking to anybody, we're not even making eye contact with anybody, we can't journal, we can't do yoga, we can't do anything except this practice. There's nothing coming in, so the mind becomes very, very clear.
Mm-hmm.
It starts to become very still.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the beginning, I was very focused on more the gross aspects of my body, like, yes, my arms, my legs, etc. But then eventually, I started to go into like more of an inner place where I was more just sensing the energy of
Mm-hmm.
who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, I think it was on day 5,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I all of a sudden was in this space of pure awareness,
Wow.
just pure awareness. I was aware that I had no thoughts.
Hmm.
And it's like, I say, it's like, I don't know if you remember that game way back when Atari's called Super Breakout, where it's like a little ball comes in and then you take your thing and you kind of like ping it away.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was, exactly what it was like. It was like I could kind of sense a thought coming from like miles away and just like, boop, nope, boop, nope, boop, nope,
Huh.
boop, and just remained in this place of no thought.
Wow.
And so I experienced myself as pure awareness. And then I sensed myself as who I was in my most pure energetic form, which
Mm-hmm.
showed up for me as this teeny tiny little light that was kind of like bluish white in color, but was like, it's
Wow.
radiated throughout the infinite, right?
Wow.
It was that bright, but
Mm-hmm.
this small, but that bright.
Yeah.
And that was a life changer for
Uh-huh.
me. It was like, this is who I am at my core.
Right.
Pure awareness.
Yeah.
No thoughts, no ego, no mind.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Just love.
Yeah. So your guru then tells you, when are you going to write your book or write your book, and how did that begin?
That thought just came from somewhere. It
Mm-hmm.
just came from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so I completed my 13-month journey, which was primarily in India, but also in Southeast Asia and Nepal. And got back, spent a little time figuring out, what do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
Got a travel nursing job in California. Didn't know anybody. And that was just the time. I just sat down and just, we have what's called the vomit. It's called the vomit edition. The first time we write it, where we're just, kind of like getting it all out, right?
Right.
that was in 2014. And then I'd kind of like put it down, pick it up, put it down, pick it up.
Right.
And sometimes I would put it down for quite some time, but it was always there, right? Kind of always in the back of my mind, like, hey, I'm still here,
Yeah.
But one thing I learned is that I say at the end of the book, like, this book has its own consciousness, right? It has its own voice. And it was only going to be ready when it was ready, not when I was ready.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm so grateful. I finally finished the bulk of it, wrote those last lines in 2020. COVID was that perfect time to finally sit down and say, okay, well, there's nothing else to do. I've done everything I could possibly do. There's nothing left, right? I'm going to write the book, finish the book. And by that time, 6 years had gone by. And of course, so much more growth had taken place during that time. All of the seeds that were planted in that journey, all of the knowledge that was there had turned to wisdom. And so I was able to now write the book from a more wisdom perspective. And even when I would think, okay, that's it, that's the last draft, we're done. No, I would hear something else or see something else. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness I didn't publish that yet. I need to go back and change that. I wrote that wrong, or, something like that.
Right.
So it was a matter then of like 4 years of refinement.
During that time period, did you have like gurus or guides or somebody that was sort of nudging you along to do this, do that? Tell me about that.
Not in that particular way where it was like that one-on-one sort of like that kind of individual guidance. I sat in the 6 years prior to 2020 a lot with Ram Dass. So he was a very, very big influence for me in really being able to bring the wisdom through. And ayahuasca was my other big influence.
Okay, tell me about those two and how they influenced you.
Well, Ram Dass is all about identifying with the soul. So he's well known for saying the ego is who we think we are.
Right.
And the soul is who we really are.
Right.
And so in sitting with him, he's a storyteller. So he would tell a lot of stories about Neem Karoli Baba, other people that he encountered on his journey, enlightened beings. And he had come to a place in his own life journey in this incarnation, where he, while not maybe a fully enlightened, self-realized being like Neem Karoli Baba, was pretty darn close, I would say, and had identified with himself as a soul, had identified with himself as love.
Right. And
just being in the presence of somebody like that shifts something.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Yeah, like his guru, Neem Karoli Baba, he didn't say very much at all. Right? He just radiated. He just radiated love.
Right.
And being in the presence of that is so deeply healing and transformative. So yeah, I did get a lot of great wisdom sitting with Ram Dass and listening to him. I would say ultimately it was the transmission, the energetic transmission of that just pure unconditional love that came through that really shifted a lot of things for me. Ayahuasca, I call her, she's like my mother. She is now more that specific guiding force for me, who knows me so intimately and is going to be often that tough mother or that fierce mother who's going to put it right in my face.
Yeah.
She's not going to sugarcoat anything, and she's going to tell it like it is.
Right.
And so she coaxed me and nudged me along in many, many ways.
Wow.
Also, and I would say that those two were probably my greatest teachers and greatest influences that finally led me to the place where I could sit down with enough perspective and enough wisdom to bring through what I had learned in a way that it would land with people.
Right.
Yeah.
By the way, do you have the book there so you can show it? And then I would like for you to, if you will, to just recount some stories that are in the book. The place beyond the story.
This is the book here, The Place Beyond the Story, A Spiritual Adventure. It's available on Amazon. Okay, so I'm just going to turn some pages. So
sure.
Here's a great, very interesting part of the journey. When I was in India, and I went on tour with a hugging saint named Amma. You familiar with her?
No, I'm not familiar with many of these characters that you're referring to, and you need to sort of explain also for me and for the audience who they are and what they do.
Yeah. So Amma grew up in India. She was a fully self-realized being from childhood, and eventually she found the right people who were able to see her for who she actually was. And as it usually happens with all of these great enlightened beings, like an ashram builds up around them, right? Because people start coming and they want to sit in their presence. And Amma so every enlightened being gives what we call darshan in their own way. And darshan means to be seen. It means to be seen by God. And the way that Amma does that is by hugging people.
Okay.
Which is very interesting in India because there's not a lot of hugging going on.
Wow. That's a cultural thing, or?
It's a cultural thing. Yeah. It's at least not in public, maybe in private, but definitely not in public. And so and especially to have a woman who's now giving this kind of physical contact to everybody is, I would say, probably pretty groundbreaking.
Wow. And
so Amma embraces you. And in that embrace, you can receive deep, deep, deep healing, Kundalini awakenings, rapid enlightenment. All kinds of things can happen with that particular kind of darshan. So she has, millions and millions of people worldwide who follow her. She travels all over the world to give this particular kind of darshan. She has centers all over the world, and thousands of people will come to receive her hug. It's like just a line, that goes miles long, basically, and just everyone goes through the line. And so this requires a giant orchestration, a team of people to support this. And so I became a part of that team.
Oh, great.
To go on the road with her in South India and to help her give her darshan to thousands and thousands of people. I did that for 4 weeks. It was for sure one of the best things that I've ever done. Didn't feel that way at the time. Felt like one of the most difficult and most challenging and most grueling things that I've ever done.
Wow.
It was hard. I'm not sure if a day went by where I didn't say at some point, I'm leaving. I'm leaving today. I don't want to do this anymore. It was really hot, extremely hot, for one.
Yeah.
And we were on these buses with just crammed with people as we're traveling from place to place. Of course, no air conditioning, these little tiny windows that are open. But there were times where I truly, truly felt like I was going to suffocate. Like I was just trying to stand up way high or get down real low, anywhere where I could get like some kind of air that didn't feel like it had been like recycled through a sweat box a million times. And
Yeah.
so that in and of itself was a challenge. And then on top of that, we're moving from place to place every couple of days. We are sleeping on floors, usually in some of her schools or other places that people might put us up. And just all day long doing different kinds of services to support this thing that's a massive orchestration.
Right.
And in the beginning, I started out, my main job was to work in the juice bar. And so it was back in this little tent that was sweltering.
Oh, gosh.
And all day just cutting fruit. And these ladies would be coming back and they're yelling at me like, limes, watermelon, water. And I'm like, okay, and I'm just trying to chop all the fruits. And boy, it was no kind of fun. And I, they always say like, Amma she knows everybody, right? Because she is a God realized being. So she understands what each of the people are going through. And she must have sensed, I'm sure, that I was having a very difficult time and on the verge of just saying, I'm out. And she gave me a new job. I got a new job. Somebody came and said, we got a new job for you. Your new job is going to be a part of our security team.
Oh.
And you're going to be on stage next to Amma. And you're going to just be a presence. So if people are trying to rush the stage or cut the line or different things like that, you're that presence there that's going to prevent people from trying to do these kinds of things.
Right.
Like, whew, okay, well, that sounds like a better job. I like this job.
Yeah.
And it also enabled me to be now very close to Amma, who is, radiates this tremendous presence, this mother energy, this love that is beyond anything that you can really describe with words. It's felt so deeply. And so that's how I got to spend the rest of that tour, which was a game changer for me. It's probably the only thing that kept me around. And what an interesting experience to be in these sometimes very, very rural areas.
Right.
Where people are just coming out of the woodwork and they can't wait for Amma to show up. They need their healing. They have their spiritual questions, whatever it is. And so we would have events where it would, possibly like 20,000 people might show up.
Wow.
And she starts at 11 o'clock in the morning. She gives like what we call a satsang, or like a little teaching. And then we sing some songs, and then she starts hugging, and she does not stop hugging until every last person has been hugged.
Wow.
So yeah.
Plus, if you're hot and sweaty, that's got to be an interesting experience.
Oh yeah, it was a experience of a lifetime. One I probably would never want to do again. But super, super glad I did.
What was your takeaway from that? What was your learned? What did you learn from it?
I learned what love in action looks like.
Actually doing it.
Yeah, watching Amma, I could clearly see that, there's no like human that could do what she did, right? She didn't eat. She didn't go to the bathroom.
Wow.
She doesn't sleep. And, even when we would close down the hugging line for the night, like, okay, we're going to give it maybe 5-6 hours, give everybody a little bit of a rest, pick it up again in the morning. She doesn't sleep. She'll go out and she'll start picking up trash off the street.
Wow.
Or and so I saw like, okay, she's the real deal. I even wondered for a while, like, she sits on a box. I was like, I wonder if there's like a toilet under there, and that's how she's going to the bathroom, so I would like peek around. I'm trying to see like, what's going on with all of this, but that's the only thing I could come up with at the end of that part of the journey. Is this is what pure unconditional love looks like in action,
Wow.
right? Where that it's that source, 100% pure source love coming through this being
Wow.
that
That's
enables
wonderful.
her to do what she does.
Yeah. So, do you have other stories from your book that you can relate to us?
Sure. Let's see. Let me just flip through here and see what what else wants to come up in this moment. Okay. So this is when I went to a place in India called Bodh Gaya. And Bodh Gaya is the place where the Buddha attained enlightenment.
Okay.
So many of us might have heard of the Bodhi tree,
Right.
which is where he sat for a long time until he became a fully enlightened being. And so this was around the time of my 40th birthday.
Okay.
And so I went and I stayed at a place called the Root Institute, which is a Buddhist institute. And in that place, it was very interesting. So we did a lot of meditating there and had a lot of silent periods, like silent dinners, and all the food times are silent. You don't talk while you're eating. We weren't allowed to kill anything, not an ant, not a mosquito, nothing. Which means if like a mosquito lands on you, you can't, like we might do, right? There were times when I was meditating, I would feel a mosquito land on me, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna let this mosquito be here. I'm just gonna let it be here until it does its thing. I'm not gonna move, So on my 40th birthday, I went to the temple where the Bodhi tree is. And I spent my 40th birthday meditating under that tree.
Yeah.
Or at least what they say is like the daughter tree or something of that tree.
What an amazing experience.
Yeah.
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 To be right there.
Very, very transformational for sure.
Right. What did you come away with that experience?
I would say probably, I mean, there's always many things. One would be the intentionality of mindful eating. Like being in a place where you're not allowed to have any distractions while you eat your food. You can't look at your phone. You can't look at a book. You're just there with your food, chewing.
Yeah.
And and pondering the relationship with food and all of the infinite amount of resources, the wonderment of what it takes to bring an orange to the table. We're talking the soil, the microbes in the soil, the earthworms, the rain, the sun. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Right. And to sit with that really gave me a profound shift in how I approached food and ate food. So that was a really big takeaway for me. And also it shifted because we weren't allowed to kill anything, right? We respected the lives of all creatures down to the tiniest little insect as a sentient being who's the same as we are.
Right.
Who has the same right to life as we do.
Exactly.
So really like now learning to embody the respect for that. I never looked at an ant the same way again. I never looked at a mosquito the same way again.
Do you think that most Americans would have a hard time dealing with that because we're so used to I don't know, being in control of our environment around us and swatting away a fly or whatever. How do you think Americans would approach that?
Probably the same way that I did.
Uh-huh.
Challenging.
Challenging. Hard to do. Yeah.
Yeah, we're all going to be in a different place with that, I think, being that we're, as Americans, so diverse as to where we're at with our connection to Mother Earth or animals or our own spirit, etc.
Do you think that most people don't have a connection with the earth?
I think as a whole that as a collective, we've really lost that connection.
Mm-hmm.
We're coming back around to it. It's something that I didn't have again until I had these experiences. And again, I would say it was really my work with plant medicines and ayahuasca that really anchored that back in for me.
Mm-hmm.
But this disconnection to who we call Pachamama or Mother Earth, right? Who is our Earth Mother,
Mm-hmm.
and to the tree peoples,
Mm-hmm.
the stone peoples, right? That all of these things that we see as inanimate, which are actually animate,
Mm-hmm.
right? They have
Everything's energy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they have consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and so we've largely disconnected from that as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
The indigenous peoples, the word indigenous means to be connected to nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
To see that as the same as us, and to be in reciprocity always with that.
Right.
Yeah, we've lost that to a large degree, and that creates sickness.
Exactly. That
It's a
connection
lot of
is
reason why.
necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be working with somebody. One of the medicines that I work with is a medicine called Combo, which comes from the frog in the Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
It's a highly intelligent, deeply healing medicine on many levels. And because of this person's particular religious indoctrination, the only way that she would work with me is if I cut out Mother Earth from all the prayers.
Why?
Because it doesn't align with her religion.
Ah. Well, wouldn't that interfere with it? It wouldn't work then if you don't have that
The
connection?
medicine will still cut through. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my hopes, of course, in working with somebody like with these medicines, I understand that part of the work of the medicines is to dismantle these limiting beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
is to dismantle this programming, this indoctrination. So, I can be amenable to that, right? So when she said we can't pray to Great Spirit, but we can pray to God, Son, and Holy Spirit. I said, okay, well, that sounds good. I didn't say like, well, that's actually the same thing.
Yeah.
Words.
Yeah, exactly.
And whatever words you're comfortable with are the words that we can use, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, the medicine is still going to cut through and do the work that needs to be done. But, I just had this conversation with this person, and I, sat there and thought about it afterwards of like, wow, the denial of the mother
Mm-hmm.
as part of God, creator, source energy, the denial of the mother as this earth who holds us.
Right.
Wow. What a, disconnection that creates, right? And how we can be so deeply attached to a belief
Mm-hmm.
that it's going to cut us off from the ability to do something which is going to bring the connection back, right? We've got to, we've got to have that connection to Pachamama.
Right.
That if we don't, it's same as if, because Pachamama, she's just God spirit coming through earth,
Mm-hmm.
realm, right? It's just a kind of like a personality.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and the denial of the mother, just in general,
Right.
uh, that's half the equation. When
Exactly.
I talk about God, I say Mother, Father, God.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's another thing is that we're so entrenched into believing that God is a he, which is gender, which is what we have. God has no gender. God would
Right.
be, in my opinion, more accurately referred to as it than he or
Yes.
she.
Yes.
What do
Yeah.
you think the world needs today? What would help the world the most right
Oh,
now?
yeah. Well, the world needs to stop pointing fingers at everything out here of what's wrong with the world and start seeing that's a reflection of what's going on in here.
Right.
I always say, like, you want to heal the world, heal yourself.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
and everything that's happening right now is we see and we've witnessed in especially the last few years through COVID and these last couple of elections, the this illusion of duality that we live in here and the polarity is more apparent than it's ever been.
Hmm.
The us them.
Yes. The division.
Yes, the division. And all, if there's something, in if somebody needs to express their suppressed rage, well, they got lots of reasons, right? Oh, here's
Hmm.
something I can be angry at. Here's something I can be angry at. If somebody has a lot of suppressed fear, oh, here's something I can be afraid of. Oh, there's something I can be afraid of,
Hmm.
right? And I see it so often, right? That everybody's pointing fingers, pointing fingers. It's out here. Well, what are we doing?
You're
We know what we're doing when we're pointing fingers. Yet it's somebody else, we're pointing three at ourselves.
exactly.
And so we've got to see like this external world is a reflection of what's happening collectively in our internal world.
Hmm.
If we change what's happening in our internal world, if we bridge the polarity and the duality, and we unite the masculine and feminine within and these sides of ourselves into the heart, right, where we
Right.
can now come back into the space of the heart. If we can transmute all of the valid sacred rage,
Uh-huh.
the fear, the blame, the shame, the guilt, what I tend to call the heavies.
Uh-huh.
If we can look inside and see that this outer landscape, what's going on in my inner landscape, which of these things apply to me, uh, and then do our work with that.
Uh-huh.
Well, if every single one of us becomes a whole healed human
Hmm.
who now understands that we are not separate from Mother Earth, from the creatures, from the animals, from the trees, that we're not separate from Source God Creator.
Mm,
Well, what a different world it would be.
exactly. Do you think that the world needs more balance between the two sides?
Yeah. When we talk about, that's another thing I'll actually that came through when I was talking about Bodh Gaya
Hmm.
and the Buddha. The Buddha found what he calls the middle path,
Hmm.
the mean between two extremes.
Right.
And I would say, like, that's what we're doing here. We're swinging the pendulum,
Right. We go from one side to the other.
you know?
Never in the center where balance is.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the pendulum is swinging, I think, even more to certain extremes right now. But that's necessary. It's a
Hmm.
necessary part. We got to see it. And eventually we turn in and we now begin to understand, oh, we need to find that middle point.
Hmm.
We need to find that equanimous center.
Hmm.
We need to find where all of that converges into the space of the heart, into the place of oneness, that sense of oneness with all beings everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
to see that my soul is the same as your soul. We're all here on a soul journey together.
Yes.
Uh, and that's all part of finding the middle
Right.
path.
Well, so many people believe that we are physical beings having spiritual experiences. The truth is, we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, and we
Yes.
have to learn how to live that way.
Yes.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
Bonnie, do you do workshops? Do you have programs that you do to help people?
I do. Yeah, I do many different things. There's a lot that I do just on the day to day with people through Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
And that's generally where I'll first meet with people.
Mm-hmm.
So we can do that assessment of the inner landscape.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, where are the traumas
Right.
still that need resolution? What are the suppressed emotions that are there? Where's the wounding
Mm-hmm.
that's causing us to feel stuck, to feel lost?
To
And
feel unworthy.
the unworthiness.
Yes,
That's at the root,
that's
always.
it. It always
100%.
goes back to that.
You follow it down far enough, you're going to get to the unworthiness.
Mm-hmm.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that actually is something that we come here to this earth school of duality to experience, right? Because in consciousness wanting to see itself and know itself, it is worthiness itself. So how can it experience worthiness of self if it hasn't experienced unworthiness?
Right.
Right? So we come here to experience unworthiness so then we can then know worthiness.
Right.
That's all part of it. And the worthiness piece, I would say, is at the root of so much of any kind of work that I'm doing with people. I say overall what I do with people is help them remember who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Soul, to learn to identify as a soul, having a soul journey,
Mm-hmm.
having a human experience, who's the co-creator of the reality that we have. And then I have many, many modalities. I meet the person where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
So many different modalities, just depending on what's best suited
Mm-hmm.
to that person. I used to do a lot more festivals. Occasionally, I still do some. In the past, I've done like voice activation workshops. I'm really, really big on voice and song and moving energy through the voice.
You're
Uh,
also a musician. Do you play an instrument?
I do. I play an instrument called the harmonium,
Mm-hmm.
which is an Indian instrument that sits on the floor. It's a wind instrument that it's kind of similar to an accordion, and
Okay.
then you play the keys. So it's like a teeny tiny piano that is operated as you move the bellows,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and I sing. Yeah, so I do sometimes do that at festivals as well. Different kinds of workshops have come up just depending on what I'm experiencing at the time. So for a while, I was focused on grief, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do we transform grief? How do we get in touch with our grief? Voice, shamanic yoga. I mean, there might, just kind of it meanders as
Mm-hmm.
I do, just whatever I'm into in the moment.
Do you do any
And
chanting or anything at these workshops?
yeah, yeah.
What kind of chants?
Sanskrit chanting primarily.
Mm-hmm. And what would one of those sound like?
One of those would sound like Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha, which is the chant of Ganesha, the mantra of Ganesha, who is the
Mm-hmm.
elephant-headed god.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it's important for people to understand when we say God that
Right.
we're not saying that that's the God. That is an aspect of God, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the bhakti yoga, where we embrace all of the different deities and we chant all of the mantras of the different deities, uh we understand that there's one God, right? There's
Right.
one source, the
Right.
one. Yet God is so vast.
Mm-hmm.
God is so big.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much to understand about God
Right.
that we can now give like each aspect of God a personality,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the aspect of Ganesha is about clearing the obstacles,
Mm-hmm.
getting out of our own way,
Mm-hmm.
removing the things that are keeping us stuck,
Right.
right? And so Ganesha is the one that we usually open with. That's traditionally the one that we'll open with because he's known as the door opener
Mm-hmm.
or the deity of new beginnings.
Mm-hmm.
And so we understand also that, as above, so below,
Right.
God out here, God in here.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, like when we're invoking these energies,
Mm-hmm.
they're in us, right? They're already in us. So now we're
Right.
awakening that aspect of self. So say if we're using the Ganesha mantra, then we are awakening the aspect of ourself that
Mm-hmm.
helps us get out of our own way.
Exactly. Which is our biggest problem most of the time is we get in our own way.
We're
We're our
tripping
own
over
problem.
ourselves. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're tripping over ourselves all day long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's always a really good one, good, beginner sort of deity to work with a lot of times, or beginner mantra to
Mm-hmm.
work with is that one. Because we got to get out of our own way.
Right. So, what do you want a reader to come away from? What do you want them to get from your book?
Well, there's many things that you can get from the book. There's a lot of different things that resonate with different people depending on where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
So for some, it's going to be the story of overcoming,
Mm-hmm.
right? Overcoming a very dark time, right? Coming out of the dark and coming into the light.
Mm-hmm.
For others, it might be that they have that sense of travel and adventure, and they want to experience, these beautiful lands that are so enriched with deep wisdom. Then that's all there in the book too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going meandering, through many, many, many amazing places. It's a really epic journey. So for some people, that's the captivating part for them. Overall, the intention of the book is to help people get to what I call the place beyond the story.
Mm-hmm.
We're telling our stories all day long. That's the ego. That's our mind.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The story of who we are, our identities, our roles, what we do in the world. I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a this, I'm a that.
Often, when people when asked the question, "Who are you?" they will fall back on their job, their
Yeah,
career. They
yeah,
don't actually answer the question. They tell you what they are, not who they are.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
a plumber. Well, no, who are you? That's what you do. But
yeah,
you're. So I'm
yeah,
going to ask you the question, Bonnie. Who are you?
yeah. I'm a soul here having a human experience.
Mm-hmm.
I came to enjoy.
Yeah.
I'm working on that every day.
Yeah. We all are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some days it's easier than others.
Exactly. So, just is there anything that I have not asked you that you wanted to talk about?
I think we've covered a lot. The book again is called The Place Beyond the Story.
Mm-hmm.
You can find it on Amazon. It's in hardback, it's in paperback, it's on Kindle, and eventually it will also be on audiobook. Not quite there yet.
Are you going to
Uh,
narrate it yourself or have
yeah,
someone do it? Oh, you are?
that's
Oh,
the plan.
great. You have a great
Otherwise,
voice for it.
thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Well, we will
Yeah.
definitely put links under this video and the audio podcast for how to find your website, how to find the book. And I do encourage everyone to read the book because it sounds like you have had a wondrous journey and you have wondrous stories to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic. Okay, well, like you say, I think we covered everything. So, Bonnie, I want to thank you for being my guest on my show. I really appreciate it and encourage everyone to go out and grab that book. Thank you for being on my show.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much.
And that'll do it for this episode. We'll see you next week for another episode on The J. Michael Show.
Goodbye.